Hi guys, I was struck by a conversation I had a while back with someone from the community, considered as a whole. That person, identifying as an NI dominant, said the following thing about their use of NI. They talked about how they used NI to synthesize all the facts in certain situations, so that, if you like, this synthesis would give them an actionable template in order to make particular decisions. Right? So synthesis, judgment, action. Okay? And well, my reaction to that was that it really doesn't sound like an NI process. To this day, I'm still wondering like how this could be described. Is this something that, what's being described right there, is it really just in the domain of what we call the Jungian functions, or does it encompass more in terms of what we know of cognition and intentionality that goes beyond the cognitive functions, or I should say the Jungian functions, not to get them confused by what, in neuroscience we call cognitive functioning? No doubt there is an element to that, but there's also a sense, I think, a broader takeaway here regarding what NI means, and something that NI is, that we should always keep that in mind. We should not allow ourselves to be distracted, right, from that. It's, this idea of like a kind of spontaneous or nearly immediate synthesis that is deliberate, right? It's not something that happens. Every NI dominant knows that, like, having NI as a dominant function is never about being in a situation where you're like, okay, now I'm going to use NI to do the synthesis of all that's going on around me so I can get an actionable template and make a decision. Like, it's just not how NI works. This led me to this insight, and I think it's possibly a quite a valuable insight, that there is a difference between, if you like, being aware of something, right, and consciously doing something, right? Like, you can be aware of a process that you're not actually, as part of that process, you're not actively doing anything, right? And I think that to have dominance NI is to have the ability to be highly aware of a particular inner perceptive process that is not really at all assimilable to a doing. That's different from judgment. When we use the functions of judgment, so to speak, there is a doing. A synthesis is a doing. A judgment in general, whatever we might consider it, is a form of doing. A justification is a doing. A negation is a doing. An affirmation is a doing, and so forth. In that case, there is a conscious doing. And that's also bringing back to this notion of judgment. In many ways, this word judgment brings us back to an earlier time in philosophy when perception and judgment were opposed. These are not words that philosophers would use nowadays, but there is a close kinship in that old philosophical jargon between the perception and judgment opposition and the opposition between doing and perceiving. In perceiving, and especially even more so in introverted perceiving, there is no real decision making. There is no real doing. What you can best do is to train yourself to become more and more sensitive to what your perception is telling you, what your perception is showing you. But it's not about using NI. I use this analogy in my current notes toward the NI book that I'm already doing a bit of work on. It's like saying, someone who says I use NI in order to do this is like a little bit like someone saying I use my eyes to look at that landscape. There's something fishy about saying I use my eyes to look at that landscape. And it's the same impression as I got when that person said, I used NI to synthesize all the facts to give me an actionable template to deliver a judgment. So again, the difference between levels of awareness and levels of conscious doing. I think that's an important distinction between perception and judgment that we should keep in mind. Guys, you know that I have a Patreon page. Please consider joining me on Patreon for a few bucks a month or a year. You get access to cool bonus content like videos. There's a nice vault of deep dive videos that are exclusive for patrons, and you also get access to our special Discord server, the Fourfold. The link to my Patreon is below. I'd be so grateful because I cannot do this without you, and I am dependent on your kind support. Don't forget that. Also, don't forget that you can have a look at my books if you'd like to read my books. I have 2 books on the INFJ, the Ecstatic Soul, which is all about the internal world of the INFJ, and the Infinite Soul on the external world of the INFJ. The links are below if you want to check out those books. If you want a deep understanding of the INFJ, certainly you should get those books. In the meantime, give me a like, helps with referencing, and see you tomorrow.